Well, we turn now to Seun Babalola, one of the independent assessors that carried out a review of the midterm performance. And Seun, we're glad to have you join us on the program.
Thanks for joining us.
Let's begin with the president subjecting what was called a policy dialogue. He chaired this policy dialogue, and there were highlighted 9 priority areas. Can you tell us about these priority areas?
Okay, thank you very much, Indy, for having me. So, at the outset of the second term of this president, there was a review of the first term and the critical issues that the government needed to confront headlong. There were 3 core themes, basically security, corruption, and the economy. And out of these 3 came about 11 priorities. First of all, a committee that the president set up came up with. That was headed by the vice president. And after a review, it came down to 9 priorities. The idea being that there are many things that government needs to do, but it has to focus on some very critical ones that will really hit the issues that are affecting Nigerians. So that was how the 9 priority areas came by, which were like promises that the government wanted to deliver in the next 4 years from 2019 to 2023.
And 2 years and some months into the second term, why has it become necessary to, do this appraisal, if you like, or assessment? And what are your findings so far? Which would be the low-hanging fruit in terms of deliverables?
Yeah, excellent. So even though this is called the midterm performance review, it is not the first. So 2019, these priority areas were set because these are promises. In terms of performance management, they don't hold water. They need to be concretized into targets and into concrete actions of government. So that was done with the help of a unit set up in the office of the secretary to the government called the Central Delivery Coordination Unit. So working with the ministries and the ministers, they disaggregated the ministerial deliverables that ministers signed up with the government. So those 9 priority areas dovetailed into deliverables that ministers signed on to deliver. So after 1 year, in 2020, about September 2020, there was the first year performance review, which to my mind, I think that's actually the first time any administration is doing that, to set target based on promises and come back 12 months later to say how far have we gone. Yeah. So that was the first, and this is the second. So but the second also coincides with the half term of the administration. So it's not only the second annual performance review, but it is a midterm review that looks at performance 2020 and 2021 and what's left to be done to hit the targets that have been set for 2023.
Seun, just like you said, this is the first time any administration will audit itself based on targets. This is what this is about.
Yeah.
All right, tell us how this will go a long way to entrench accountability in government processes among the, if you like, the ministers themselves.
Yeah.
So truth-telling is a very difficult, thing, and we find it difficult to tell ourselves the truth. So it takes courage to not only look at what you've been doing by yourself. That's a self-assessment. That takes some courage. But when you open it up to external assessors, that takes another level of courage. Because, these are people who will look you in the face and tell you, your effort is an effort, but it's not good enough. So it is a process whereby government wants to demonstrate, not only to itself, but to the citizenry, that I am trying to hold myself to account. And if the president says, you guys come and tell me how I'm doing, then that is going to cascade down to what ministers are also doing. An action as simple as holding a mirror in your face will cause you to do some adjustments. So that's a level of accountability. To say, let's hold a mirror to our faces and let's tell ourselves the truth. How are we performing? And on the basis of that, you can also compare one ministry to another and see, okay, given the same resources, this is what one ministry is doing. Yeah. And how am I doing? So it's a different level of accountability that we've it's a bit strange to the public service, and it's taking time to really get, bedded into government.
Let's bring it to brass tacks. I mean, number one, what tools do you deploy or rely on in coming up with the assessments that you have to carry out? How far-reaching in terms of scope? How many ministries do we have? About 28 or 29 of them.
Correct.
Are you throwing the net all across these ministries? And I want to know specifically, based on your assessment so far, are you able to tell the government on a scale of 0 to 10, you have performed well, or in this area, security, for example, economy, in fighting corruption, infrastructure provision and all of that? What are the specifics?
Thank you very much. So talking about scope, so 9 priority areas dovetails into about 302 projects across 29 ministries and the Office of the Head of Service to deliver on these 9 priority areas in 4 years. So these 302 deliverables are broken down into annual targets up to 2023. So for example, priority 3 says would ensure energy and power sufficiency. All right. So this unit says, well, that's a promise. Bring it down to brass tacks, as you said. Yeah. How much power does this country need, and how much power do we need to drive both industries and household down to 2023? So it's 11,000 megawatts, for example. So right now we're at 4,000 megawatts 2019. That means you need to add at least 1,000 megawatts every 4 years to get anywhere close to about 6 or 7 megawatts. So that is the kind of targets that the Ministry of Power and other ministries that contribute to that target will be measured by. So every year we come with a scorecard that says on this priority, Mr. President, there were 26 deliverables. Out of these 26 deliverables, about 13 of them are on track. All right? Another 7 are at risk. Okay, if you keep going the way you're going, you may not hit target. And these ones have not actually started. They are behind schedule. And it will take a sheer miracle for you to hit your target. So with that kind of feedback, there is bound to be necessary action taken. Either to say, okay, these babies that are not doing well, what are we going to do about them? And the minister doesn't want to come back next year and those same babies that are red remain red after collecting loads of billions, for example, from the annual budget. So in terms of performance, that is those 3 colors tell a lot of statements. So the more greens tells you that you're doing some things well, but the more red tells you that you're not making enough
something
progress.
badly. Yeah. Let's even break down the 9 priority areas so we know what we're talking about, Sean.
Exactly.
Break it down. The 9 priority areas. What are these 9 priority areas? I know, I have an idea that number 1 is something that has to do with economy.
Stabilizing the macro
All right,
economy.
so break it down for us.
Okay, so we have stabilizing the macroeconomy, priority 1, for example. You have agriculture and food security as priority 2. You have energy sufficiency, and energy is both power and electricity, which is very pertinent to sustaining industrialization, which is number 4. So driving industrialization especially through the small and medium-scale enterprises, so that the engines of growth of any economy. Okay, then you have priority number 5, and so number 5 talks about human capital, basically, which is education, health, and then productivity. Then you have priority number 6, where you want to ensure that the industries are performing at the level that they ought to. Priority number 7 ensures inclusion and poverty reduction. So that's what we talk about gender issues, that's what we're talking about inclusivity, people with disabilities, and then the poor and the vulnerable. Yeah. Priority number 8 is to fight corruption, that almighty corruption, and ensure good governance.
I'm sure some people will be expecting that's priority number 8
to be number 1.
Yeah, well, maybe first 3.
Okay.
But go on.
And then priority number 9 is provide security for all citizens. And so remember, it's not in any particular order because they are all interlinked. If you provide security, there will be more land to drive agriculture, agricultural yield. If you provide energy and power, industries are going to thrive, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Okay, so it's 2 years into the lifespan of this administration. One critical thing that seems to be missing when it comes to, government taking over after government is the issue of continuity. Are you advising on the issue of institutionalizing this process of, critical self-assessment and getting independent organizations like yourself to make a good assessment, of the government?
Extremely important. A lot of investment has gone into setting up this kind of system, and for the good of Nigeria. So, I'm an independent assessor. I'm also a citizen of the country. So wearing those two caps, we certainly want this to continue because, like I said, accountability is a difficult art in government for so many reasons. So we're telling government that this is good, but this should come to stay. You should institutionalize it, number one, by mainstreaming that structure into the normal order of government. So it is currently a unit in the office of the SGF, and it's being staffed by civil servants, so that is good in itself. That helps continuity. It's not external experts that are in there. These are civil servants. So you're building capacity. You are also building capacity in the ministries. So it's not only in the office of the secretary to the government that you have people with the skills and capacity to assess performance. They are right around all of the ministries. So other things that government could do, if possible, legislation also helps to institutionalize things. And
don't you think it would make sense if independent bodies like yourself are embedded within the civil service? Because the perception out there is, for as long as the civil service is allowed 100% to carry out this kind of assessment, it may not get the kind of result you're expecting.
Yeah, so good thought. For sustainability, it has to be government driving it. But the way it's being done is that they invite external people, just like auditors. You have internal auditors and then you've got external auditors. So the external auditors provide that level of validity and say, okay, you said this is okay, but what of this? And then other best practices. So in my view, I think it's okay because when you embed people, they also begin at some point maybe to get biased or get too used to or give excuses for your constraints. But when they are external and they are citizens, there's already some level of questioning they are coming with. We're not seeing this, we're not seeing that.
When they're looking from the outside inside, they're free of any encumbrances.
And you can ask the difficult questions.
All right. Talk to us about this, what you call, or what is called the delivery unit, that are responsible for the so-called deliverables that track performance. What is it all about?
Okay, so the delivery unit doesn't do. So the ministries actually deliver these deliverables. What the delivery unit does is to help government keep their eyes on the ball. Government has so many things it's doing. These 302 deliverables I told you about is not everything government is doing, So delivery unit helps us to say, okay, Mr. President, what are your priorities? What must you focus, because you can't do everything, okay? And then to ensure that the henchmen of the government keep that focus by regular performance tracking. So if I come to the studio and said, Ngozi, the first thing I'll look for in this studio anytime I come is the cleanliness of the studio. It drives your focus to that. So that's what the delivery unit does. Helps government keep focus and keep track. And I think you might have been there when the president was talking about weekly briefings. So that's it. You can't brief the president on everything going on in the country, but you need to brief him on these focus areas every week.
The key areas.
Yes, the key
there is this new digital performance management system. Yeah, let's talk about it.
Okay, so if you want something, you talked about sustainability. To be sustained, it has to be digital because we track 302 deliverables and gives us about 1,200 points of data, and you track that quarterly. You can't do that on a piece of paper and it won't get lost. You can do that with Seun because I will leave and somebody will forget something. So everything has got to be digitized, and digitized to the level that you can track real-time performance in the office of the government. I seem to be very passionate about this because I've done performance management systems all over the world, and what this government is doing, and not singing their praise, is even above what some people do in private sector. So this is a digital system that sits in the office of the president, just like any TV and SGF, and is seen on these 9 priority areas, all the projects under the 9 priority areas, and how the needle is moving. So if the needle is not moving for 2 weeks, for 1 month, you can see that this needle has remained. Is it that the needle is broken or nothing is happening?
So you can call the particular minister that's in charge of that.
Because you can see the ministry, you can see the minister and say, why is this thing
as a Nigerian citizen?
Yeah, as a Nigerian citizen.
You don't have to be in government to have access to this information. What role, because you mentioned private sector moments ago, how is there any role for the private sector? Is this an all government affair or is there a place for private sector, which is very critical? Like you'd hear experts say it is important that the private sector is on the driving seat.
Excellent. I mean,
Yeah.
the economy is private sector driven. Okay, revenue is a lot. GDP is private sector driven. So these, other than us assessors, there are private sectors. NESG, for example, the chairman NESG was present today to chair a panel. We had mongoose like Malaji Aliko Dangote as well, to give the perspective that, feedback to government on the policies that government is enacting and how those policies are impacting on industry, on the private sector. So the private sectors are partners in giving government both feedback and also advice on how it can improve. So we assessors come with green, red, and amber. The private sector says, this red, this is how it's impacting us, and this is what you can do to turn from, and this is how we can support. So,
what are the key things you heard from them? And I know that the former Agric Minister, of course, the president of the AFDB, additional pointed out the need for structural bottlenecks to be addressed. What did you hear from him, loud and clear?
Okay, so
his submission.
Okay, thanks, Ngozi. He's been here as a minister yeah. Of agriculture. Yeah. So also as an expert in the agri field, and there were programs that were successfully completed or launched that other African countries actually took from Nigeria, according to him, and have launched it, and they are doing well in their own country. So it's like a Nigerian product, and he charges the government to continue on some of those instances. He also highlighted some of the programs that the bank is using to support African economies, and also encourage the government to, that he promised commitment of support from some of those programs to the federal government.
He also addressed the issue of ports, the state of the ports
let me
that
just
need
ask this question.
to be reformed.
You were there.
I'd like you to
I'll
address
mention
that.
about that. Yeah.
You were there and you listened all through. We know that 2 ministers have got the boot in this administration. Would you say it was as a result of this performance indices, and are we likely to see more based on this? And of course, your amber, red, yellow. Okay, so we, the assessors, give government a feedback on their performance. So there are a lot of decisions that we expect that government should take. When you're trying to improve performance, sometimes it's more budget, it's more money. So there are a whole plethora of choices that the government has to do. So when I sit back as a citizen and see some things happening or some things not happen, as my conjecture may be as good as yours. Okay, is this because of performance feedback, or is it because of some other causes? It could be here or there. But what we'd like to see is definite actions that government is using to address those reds. Okay, but the problems may differ. Like I said, some may be capacity issues, some may be constraints coming from, some may be external COVID. I mean, COVID, who knows that COVID is going to come? So the most important thing is to deal with the problem and get it fixed. And whoever needs to do it, then let them be in position to do that.
All right, Seun Babalola, independent assessor, presidential midterm performance retreat going on right now. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
And I'm sure some of us are better enlightened.